As I just mentioned, we've got Joe Bonamassa with us, one of the biggest names in blues music. And Joe, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Before we get into what's going on with your career at the moment with your new Rory Gallagher or Gallagher tribute album and upcoming shows, wanted to delve into the your start a little bit. I read that your parents were musicians and owned a record store. You got your first guitar at age 4 and could play Stevie Ray Vaughan and Jimi Hendrix note for note by age 7, which obviously is pretty incredible.
Well, that
Tell us a
was,
little.
I mean, that's my dad owned a guitar shop. He's a guitar player, musician. I grew up around it.
Mhm.
And being from upstate New York, sometimes you catch these summers where it was just rainy and cold in the 80s, And and then it was rainy and cold and snowy in the winter. So you really didn't have much to do other than play your guitar in your bedroom. And I started playing when I was 4, so I've been playing guitar 45 years. It's still a challenge. I mean, I'm still figuring stuff out about it, and I'm still like, amazed that it's still, you discover you have a finite amount of notes and frets on a guitar, but you're discovering new things all the time. And that's what keeps it interesting to me. And I've been touring since I've been 11, 12. That was my first like professional gigs. Did plenty in DC, by the way, in my formative years.
Well, I actually saw one at Montgomery College, and I thought it was like the early 2000s. But I did
Probably.
what's that?
Probably. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, I did a web search that made it sound like it was 2007, but I thought it was a little earlier. And then another good friend of mine who said he was part of your street team in like 2004 said he saw you at Jackson, Springfield, Virginia, in like, yeah, I think 2004 he
Yeah.
said it was.
Yeah. Jax. I was it with two X's, I think. Jax.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
JAXX.
yeah,
Exactly.
Jax. And then we did Blues Alley on Wisconsin. That was one. I played
Wow,
the
that's a tiny club. You played, well, I guess that was pretty early in your
Yeah, I
career.
played there, and then um I played what did we I played a place called the Bayou
Yeah, yeah. The
also,
Bayou was a great rock and blues place back in the day.
and I played the 930 Club once. So I've been in and around I even have a 202 number, believe it or not, because I used to live in DC.
Really? I had read that
I
you
was
took
in
some lessons from Danny. Well, go
I
ahead.
was in DC in probably 2000, 2001.
Wow. Okay, that's interesting. What brought you down here?
My
Or up
girlfriend
here?
at the time was she was a young lawyer at a firm called Greenberg and Trarick on in DuPont Circle, and
Hmm.
so she worked there. And me being able to do this from wherever, I followed her to DC.
Oh, wow, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I read something that was obviously very interesting to the people here in the DC area is that you had taken some lessons from Danny Gatton when
I
you
did.
were.
I knew him. I knew him when I was a kid. I met him when I was 12 years old, and he kind of took me under his wing and showed me a lot about guitar. And he was also the one that kind of started my lifelong love affair with vintage Fender guitars and Telecasters and amps, and he was a good guy, and he's I mean, he passed away in 94. And
Right.
and I remember, getting a call. I was on the road in Austin, Texas, and got a call from my parents about that. But he was one of those people who was more famous now that after he passed on than he was during his lifetime, which you see that a lot. But he was an amazing person, amazing guitar player, and didn't get enough credit in his own lifetime.
Yeah, true. I mean, obviously the people in this area recognized it and appreciated it, but yeah, I mean,
100%. Yeah. I mean, it was 100%. And, he was a DC, Maryland, that kind of, Virginia. I mean, that kind of, that's, even into Delaware, he was very well known, and,
yeah.
and he was a cult hero.
Yeah, no
Back before
question.
this is all back before the internet. Like if he lived in modern times, he'd be a huge star because it would just be one viral video after the next, you know. But back in the 80s and 90s, it wasn't like that.
Yeah. Actually, that brings up a point I was kind of curious about. Like, so you were born in 77, so like MTV was kind of in its infancy when you were really young. So
Right.
did your dad have any? I mean, and again, this was kind of before DVDs too. So when did you first lay your eyes on people playing guitar and stuff like that?
I mean, yeah, I mean, there was music on TV, I mean, I remember, seeing Stevie Ray Vaughan on MTV in the 80s when they would do those like Mardi Gras concerts on a riverboat, and it was they did Blues Night. It was the Fabulous Thunderbirds and Stevie Ray Vaughan. Mason Ruffner was on that. And I mean, when music is on TV, you're like, oh my God, and I used to beg my parents to stay up to watch the musical guests on Saturday Night Live or The Tonight Show or something like that. And and then David Sanborn had his show after on New Year's Eve, where you'd see Clapton and all the cats, Marcus Miller and Hiram Bullock and the New York crew, and that was so devastatingly profound for someone who was into that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? And so
Right,
rare. Now you can go, a couple of search, and a click, and you could
right.
get access to everything. But back in the early 80s and the 90s, it was a rare occurrence to see stuff on TV that you identified with.
Right. Yeah, that's why I was curious, is because I didn't even realize MTV had specials like that. I was in college from 8 to 84, and people just kind of had it on in the background, like in the living room of where this like fraternity I was in for a couple of years, and it was just typically playing the popular music videos of the time, but not cool stuff like Stevie Ray Vaughan and that sort of thing for the most
Well, you
part.
used to see, I mean, you used to see videos on MTV of people like Robert Cray, when he had those
Right.
hits, Smoking Gun, Right Next Door, that big album. And you'd see Stevie Ray Vaughan videos. I mean, they had the popular video was Superstition with Stevie Wonder and Cold Shop. And you would see it occasionally on MTV. And then you would see the pop music. You'd see the
Right.
Madonnas and the Duran Durans and whatever was popular at the time. But it was definitely more of an eclectic mix. And as MTV pivoted out of actual music into reality shows, then that was then you had to go to MTV2 or you had to go to
Right.
Palladia and all of that. And then you're in the internet age, and then you don't need them. You don't need cable TV.
Right. So one thing I had read that you opened for BB King when you were only 12 years old. I mean, you've obviously accomplished a lot already. Yeah, but was that moment open for BB one of the biggest moments of your life?
Well, it changed my life. I mean, it was kind of like being discovered. And, I did a lot of shows with BB over the years. But that first one was so profound, because
Mhm.
it was photographic evidence of it, you know,
Yeah, yeah, and
which, again, doesn't seem like a big deal now. But there is photographic evidence of me meeting BB King for the very first time. My mom took the photo.
yeah,
And
no, that's a
you can
big
look it
deal no
up
matter
online, and
what
there's a young
year
version of
you.
me sitting next to Mr. King, and that was the start of it. Very few times you could see someone's pivotal moment in their careers, being captured. And I'm lucky enough to have two: the time I met BB King, and the time that Eric Clapton came out at the Royal Albert Hall and sat in with us in 2009. And I have photographic evidence of it because we shot it as a DVD and it exploded on PBS.
Yeah, that's obviously a huge moment also. Talking about big concerts like that, I mean, I know there's the one coming up for Buddy Guy's 90th birthday celebration at Radio City Music Hall, and you're on the lineup for that. That's just an incredible lineup coming up for that one.
That's well, I'm involved in that same month. I mean, we're involved with I'm playing Eric Clapton's Crossroads in September in Austin, and then 3 weeks later, 2 weeks later in New York for Radio City Music Hall. And it's not lost on me how lucky I am to get invited to these kind of things, you know. And it's Buddy Guy's 90th birthday.
Right. Let's talk about your new brand new album and DVD, Spirit of Rory, live from Cork. And I learned how to pronounce his last name from listening to you on Sirius XM. It's Gallagher, not Gallagher.
Now, this
Um,
this is the thing. When you're talking about a band like Oasis, it's the Gallagher brothers, okay? When you're talking about the Irish pronunciation, the G is silent. And I know this because I was corrected by Donald Gallagher, Rory's brother. Because all the Americans say the second G. I said, well, nobody corrected us. It's Gallagher. Yes.
Got it. So tell us about Roy, like what drew you to his music that you wanted to dedicate like an album to him?
Well, he's a working class hero. I mean, all the people that my father's age in the 80s, they all had long hair. 'Cause they're kind of like relics from the 70s, 60s and 70s, and wore flannel shirts and had a day gig in a factory, you know? And that's what, like, when I saw first pictures of Rory Gallagher, it was like, yeah, it looks like the people my dad hang out. And it was just like this guttural, floored, I mean, like everything was on 10, you know what I mean? It was just guttural, and he almost had this like this bolt of lightning that he was channeling, through his guitar playing and singing. And they called me in 24 to do these gigs last year, and I was honored to do it. And it's just for me it was a very daunting task, and I did my best with it, and it came out really good. And the album got great reviews, and it was my 31st number one album on the Billboard Blues charts. And a little fun fact is I hold the all-time record for the most number ones in a specified chart.
Yeah, that is, yeah, I saw that.
Not just
And
the blues chart, of all the charts.
yeah,
I
I mean
think
that
it's
that blew my mind. I mean, most people,
George Strait has 27. He's number two, but we have 31 in the blues chart. Now, George Strait has sold way more records than I have, but as far as number ones in a specific chart, that would be us.
yeah, that's more number ones than most people have albums in a career. I mean, even the Rolling Stones, I think, have only had like 24 releases in their like 64-year career. So that's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. So
Yeah, congratulations.
yeah.
Talking about that, I mean, you must be putting out like 1 to 2 albums every year, just about. I mean, are you writing material while you're on the road, I assume, or do
I
you
don't
set
write
up?
I mean, and when the albums, I mean, like the Rory stuff, that was a live album, So you have 14 studio albums, I want to say. And so those are the studio albums, and then the live stuff, and the side projects that we did for all these years. And it's a lot. It's a lot. I look back at those formative years, and I can't believe I signed up for that.
So your band is coming to Wolf Trap in Vienna, Virginia on Wednesday.
Wednesday. Yeah.
Have you ever played that venue before?
Yeah, last year.
Oh, okay. Guess I didn't realize that. Yeah, not, very nice venue.
Yeah, we're coming there with Gov't Mule. So
I realize that, and obviously Mule's got that also uber talented guitarist and Warren Haynes. Will you two be on stage together at any point?
he just texted me about that about an hour ago. So yeah, we're working it out.
Oh, good,
I've
good.
known him for
Just
30 years, and we don't even have to talk about it. We don't have to rehearse it. It just happens. We play really well together, and it's just, we'll talk about it probably the day of show. Hey, you want to come up with us on this? And yeah, great. We
very cool.
played so much together, and it's like it's always a blast.
Yeah, when you guys are working out tour schedules, do you say to your management, "Hey, can you get this band? I love these guys," or how does that work?
Well, we had these opportunities to do these shows together, and there's like 8 or 9 of them next month, and it's always a pleasure. It's always a pleasure. So I'm glad it worked out.
Yeah, Warren's a great guy, and obviously also a great guitarist.
You're one of the best.
Yeah. Joe, many thanks for coming on the show. But before we go, do you have any parting words for the listeners?
Well, I'm always, being a former DC resident, it's always nice to come back and reminisce of a very short part of my life was spent in DC, but I always look back fondly on living in Washington because it was like it was I always love going there. I always love hanging out there, and we rarely have a day off, and this is no exception. But I'm just excited. And the Wolf Trap, I goes back to opening up for BB King 30 years ago. I mean, I played plenty of shows at the Barns at Wolf Trap. So to come back, and this will be our second time in the big room barn on our own. So that's pretty cool.
Great, great. Yeah, it is a beautiful venue. Anyway, thanks again. Much continued success to you, and hope to see you on the road.
Cool. Thank you, Elliot.
All
Appreciate
right.
it.
All right. Bye-bye.